He knows the questions, but he doesn't seem to have the answers that satisfy people, does he? Cue Andy Burnham to at least give the impression that he does.
Well, indeed so. I mean, look, but this Burnham stuff is fascinating. I mean, newsflash, Andy Burnham wants to be Prime Minister. Everybody knew that. Everybody knows that. He stood for the Labour leadership twice. It would have been his in 2015 were it not for a complete screw-up, which don't need to detain us, but about how he voted on the sort of welfare changes at that time. He opened it up for Corbyn. I've interviewed him where he says, he talks about how much he regrets that and he can't help but wonder, what would have been, etc. Who knows how history would have played out differently, Brexit, etc., etc. Anyway, that is ancient history now, and he still wants to be Prime Minister. Guess what? He doesn't think much of Keir Starmer. He and Starmer don't care for each other. They never have cared for each other very much. There's genuinely, I think, a bit of personal animus between the two men as well as competition. Yeah, I think so. I think Starmer's team definitely do not like the fact that every time they've been on the ropes, this was true in opposition as well, that, Burnham would just pop up, as he's doing right now, and go, hello, I'm here. Come and look at me. I'm still here. And so what Burnham is clearly, what's also more dangerous about this, though, obviously, is it comes at a moment of some political peril for Starmer. It comes at a moment just on the eve of the Labour Party conference, and it comes at a moment when Labour MPs are desperate, are yearning for definition. They're yearning for someone to give them a sense of moral mission, a sense of what this government and what the Labour Party in 2025 and beyond is for. And that is something that Keir Starmer has been generally unwilling or unable to do. It's not the sort of thing. He's not a sort of proselytizing politician, to go back to our religious references. He's not he isn't someone who is motivated, a great political teacher who says, comrades, I'm motivated by the vision of a burning city, shining city on a hill. Come with me. And that is what Burnham's sort of trying to do here. He's not just saying what he's done before, which is say, I want to be Prime Minister. He's setting out an alternative prospectus. Now, you might think that is unrealistic or whatever, but he's trying to basically, everything that he's doing is trying to emit a signal which says, Labour MP, your average Labour MP, you want a Prime Minister with a bit of philosophy and a bit of vision. That's me, not him.
And in the interview where he says that's up to them, the interview with The Telegraph, Tony Diver, who I spoke to earlier on, it's up to them, Labour MPs, not up to me. Well, that's a bit disingenuous, isn't it? It's up to both.
Well, so the funny thing is, I think about this, Sheila, is that I think that Andy Burnham is at once extremely dangerous to Keir Starmer and not remotely dangerous at all. And the reason for that is, he's dangerous because, let's give him credit. He's clearly a potent political figure. He's been a successful mayor of Greater Manchester. He's made, that job didn't exist before. He's made a great job of it. Greater Manchester in lots of ways is booming, particularly the city of Manchester. He will definitely have had a hand in that. He is someone with genuine political skill. Sometimes, at least, he's got genuine political saleability. He won every single ward in Greater Manchester in the previous mayoral elections. That doesn't happen by accident. Even the most Tory places, he has got a brand which appeals. All of that is true. And he's been in politics a long time, so he's been around. All of that is true. And if he were in the House of Commons, I would be very, very, very worried right now being in number 10 because he is the clear king over the water. The point is, he's too far beyond the water. He is beyond the water. Right now, he has got soldiers that, his followers in Parliament, they are soldiers without a general because the general is not on the field. He's not in the arena. He's not in the House of Commons.
And there's a good few hurdles to get him there.
And I cannot for the life of me see, generally, for all of this talk, which is obviously kind of great sport for us and so on. But for all of this talk and excitement, I cannot see how that mechanism is achieved to get him into Parliament with any ease. And in fact, I think it's probably impossible. Because what would have to happen? So there would have to be a by-election. So presumably that would be cooked up in some way. It would have to be, I think, in Greater Manchester. It would seem kind of incredible
or at least
to believe.
The Northwest.
At the very least, the Northwest, somewhere with which he had a personal connection. He's got to win that by-election. Would you bet the Labour Party winning any by-election anywhere right now? Even with him, it would be high stakes. If he won it, it would really...
Reform
it would burnish
would throw everything at it.
Reform would throw everything at it to see him off. Yeah. It would be the biggest political media circus that we'll probably see in this Parliament. If he pulled it off, it would be burnish his credentials and he would go into Parliament basically with an unbelievable wind at his back to take the leadership. But it's a big, big risk. And even getting that selection to become an MP... The Labour Party, the Labour Keir Starmer NEC-controlled National Executive Committee of the Labour Party would have to say, yes, Andy Burnham will allow you to stand in that by-election, which is basically like Keir Starmer saying, Andy Burnham, do you fancy my job? And come in to have a go at it. Yeah. So I just can't quite see it, even getting past the Labour NEC, because the Labour NEC will also be able to say, sorry, Andy Burnham, your term as mayor doesn't expire until 2028. So if you come into Parliament... And are you going to give up the mayoralty? Because if you do, then there'll be a by-election for the mayoralty as well, which again the Labour Party would fear losing to Reform. So it's nightmare after nightmare after nightmare.
And you're going to be at the conference, obviously, up in
Yes.
Liverpool. The thing we're discussing this hour, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation figures that suggest, or projections that suggest, the cost of living, unless they really turn the ship around, the cost of living is still going to be a massive problem for people, all people, but especially for the poorest. That's going to be a key measure, isn't it, in the next election and even before then?
It is, and there are lots of Labour MPs who want to see the government take a far more aggressive approach to these things. They hark back to the new Labour government and talk about what was achieved then with child poverty. I suppose this is the other thing, though, to say about a potential Burnham premiership. I think there is no doubt that Burnham, in some ways, could improve the political prospects of the Labour Party in the sense that the thing that he would bring that Starmer is, as I say, unable or unwilling to bring, is greater communication skills, greater clarity, a sort of slightly more at ease in the kind of content vibes age, media age that we're living in.
Kind of thing,
yeah. And he's been in politics a long time in the way that Starmer hasn't. So I could see that being a real improvement. But a lot of the structural factors that are inhibiting
they don't disappear, do they?
They don't disappear, whether it's a Starmer government or a Burnham government or whoever it is. The structural factors, high debt levels which are basically constraining all government decision-making because debt interest payments have become such a large part, basically the third biggest government department now in terms of expenditure. Reform on the horizon, a fragmenting political environment, a hollowing out of the Labour vote. All of these things, yes, they might be incrementally able to change with a Burnham premiership or leadership, but they would all still be there. And his saying, well, let the bond markets, let's not be in a hock to the bond markets. It might work. You could have a more aggressive borrowing strategy if you were executing the right way. There's no need that would lead to a trust-style Armageddon, as Number 10 is briefing. But it is possible that it might not work, and you might have a bond market run, and that would be a problem. So, it's fraught with difficulty. The way I read this, Sheila, in a way, with what Burnham's doing, I almost think this is a kind of cri de coeur. It's like it's a cry of frustration.
Do something, kind of thing.
Do something, but also, actually, I think he knows that the hurdles for his to get into Parliament are so great that he's deeply, deeply frustrated. And he's doing this at a moment because he can't quite think what else to do, because it isn't clear how he gets back into Parliament.
And it was interesting to hear, in Aggie's report earlier, you might not have heard it, where Steve Reed's response to what the Joseph Rowntree Foundation has been saying about the cost of living and the difficulties, carrying on and on and on. Steve Reed says, no, rejects it outright. That's not what's going to happen. Things are going to improve, and they're going to improve largely because we're going to get more people into work, and work gets people out of poverty. That's become something of a mantra, hasn't it, of the Labour government, and it isn't always obvious that it will be a successful one. It's
not always obvious, but I think there is a recognition across the government that something is going to have to be done with regards to the numbers of people going on to particularly sickness-related benefits. Now, the problem with that, I think it was no surprise that Pat McFadden ended up becoming the Work and Pensions Secretary with a view to try and do something about it. He did. It's clear, I think, that McFadden is flying a couple of kites. He did a piece in the Sunday Times, or a sort of long sort of profile thing in his own constituency in Wolverhampton last weekend, where I think it was clear that this is the start of sort of rolling the pitch for a renewed look at changes to welfare, and particularly sickness-related welfare, because making the point with so many young people in particular ending up on sickness-related benefits that this is a sort of moral problem as much as an economic one for the Labour Party. Of course, again, and I go back to the structural factors that would afflict Burnham or Starmer, you've got a parliamentary Labour Party of Labour MPs who really don't want to hear about that sort of stuff. They really don't want to countenance that sort of stuff. I was talking to a Labour person in the last couple of days who was saying they have never known a parliamentary Labour Party so angry, so furious, so disputatious. And you consider this has come only after a year since that sort of massive majority. And that is why Starmer finds himself in difficulty. And like I say, there is an argument to say that Labour is approaching, or might approach, I don't think it's anywhere near there yet, but it might approach in the next 6 months, 12 months, particularly after the Wales and Scotland elections next year, might be looking at a kind of Theresa May-style 2019 moment where the party feels so desperate that they're looking for anyone else to try and take them out of the hole that they're in. And of course, in 2019, if you use that kind of parallel, you had Boris Johnson, who was the clear king over the water, and much like Andy Burnham, had that alternative prospectus in the form of a different Brexit deal. The key difference, and I go back to it, is that he was in Parliament. He was already in Parliament. And if Burnham were there, it would be a moment, I think, of tremendous jeopardy for him. But I don't see how he gets there.